Welcome to Northern Lights. We're here in Lester Park in Duluth, Minnesota, and we'll be visiting with Andrew Slade, who's the author of two books. The first one was called Guide to the Superior Hiking Trails, and the second one is Whitewoods Quiet Trails. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Appreciate your joining us, and maybe you could start off by telling us a little bit about how you got started on this guide trail writing business, and how you got started in the outdoors.
Well, a friend of a friend and a friend. I moved to Duluth about 7 years ago, it would be 1991 or so, and before that I'd been living up in Ely. And when I came here, there's a number of people I knew, and one of the kind of a friend of a friend, one of the people I knew was involved with the Superior Hiking Trail Association. Now, I'd never really hiked on the trail, but I knew the North Shore pretty well, and I'd spent a lot of time there and knew that there's this new trail going in. And they said, boy, what we really need to accomplish our mission, to get people out there, is a book. We want to be able to hand people a book and say, this is where things are. And
absolutely.
And we need a sucker. We need a volunteer to help put this thing together. So I picked up and got all the information in and reprocessed it and turned it around and put out and helped write and edit the book, The Guide to the Superior Hiking Trail.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because that was the first book. When did that come out exactly?
That would have been about 1992, I think, that was published.
And that association has really grown by leaps and bounds as the trail has.
Yeah.
About how many miles of hiking is there on the trail right now?
Well, you can start from just a little further up the shore here around two harbors. Actually, in Knife River you can start and go almost 250 miles of trail between here and the Canadian border.
250 miles?
Yeah.
How close is it to completion at this point?
Well, it makes it all the way to the Canadian border. Their mission now says that they're going to build a trail all the way from south of Duluth up to the Canadian border. So there's a pretty big gap between where they are now into Duluth. But from two harbors on up, it's pretty much complete with the exception of about 2 breaks in the trail where there's private land. And
now this trail is used primarily for hiking in the summer, but it's available for snowshoeing to a certain extent in the winter.
Some people even try to ski it, but that's pretty dangerous.
Is it dangerous because there's snowmobiles on it?
No, just there's tight turns and trees and things in the way.
And it's pretty steep terrain in a lot of
places. Yeah, it was laid out as a hiking trail, and
so
ski trails tend to be laid out as ski trails, and there's a big difference.
Right.
But snowshoeing, it's a great place to snowshoe for sure.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a good place to segue into your second book, which is Whitewoods Quiet Trails, and that came out in
1997.
1997?
Yeah.
And that's tell us a little bit about how that book got started.
Well, that first book published by the Superior Hiking Trail Association was such a success for the association. They sold probably 10,000 copies of it. That they decided, well, let's stay in the publishing business. So let's continue to serve our same readership by coming up with something that's a winter version or winter companion guide, the same thing. So basically same size and published by the same people, and a lot of the same people are behind it. So it's just a nice complement to the other one. So.
Yeah, I think it really is. That's a book that I've used on a number of occasions, and one of the things I really like about it is the way it's laid out. Maybe you could just tell us briefly about the 4 or 5 different sections. And
sure. Well, I'm actually a naturalist and an educator at heart. So one thing we start with is natural history. Why winter ecology functions the way it does. I spent about 5 years up in Ely teaching kids about winter, so I pulled out my bag of tricks on that, and how to identify different kinds of tracks, how trees survive, how plants survive, how animals survive.
I think one thing a lot of people would be surprised to know is that actually the North Shore is one of the warmer places in Minnesota.
Right. Yeah. Just like in the summer, it's colder. It's colder by the lake in the summertime. It's warmer by the lake in the wintertime.
And again, that's because Lake Superior, and it's a large body of water. And even if what is it at the temperature-wise through this?
Boy, the average temperature is about 39 degrees, and it doesn't vary that much up or down from that. So.
And that seems cold, but when it's below zero inland, that 39-degree large body of water really keeps it keeps the North Shore a little bit warmer.
The other thing that the lake does is it provides moisture, lake effect snow to the ridgeline, where both the Superior Hiking Trail and a lot of the ski trails in the book are. So there's this great supply of lake effect snow, not nearly as much as if you're on the other side of the lake over by Houghton. But we get some, boy, there's one day in Silver Bay, about 94, 93, they got 5 feet of snow.
5 feet of snow in a single day?
Yep, and lake effect snow is this beautiful, white, fluffy stuff. It's just great. So
Terrific. And then the next part of the book, you talk about how to really prepare for winter, and perhaps blue jeans aren't the best thing to wear in the winter.
Well, I have been known to go skiing in my blue jeans.
Have you? Okay. Well, then I stand corrected.
On a warm day when I know I'm only going to be out for half an hour, 45 minutes,
Okay.
something like that, it's fine. It keeps you warm. But if you're going to be out for any longer, you need to be aware of you need to take care. You need to take caution. And things like blue jeans and the cotton in them are gonna might get you in trouble if you happen to fall, if you happen to get wet.
Right. The cotton really holds the moisture, so they really, it's much better to have a wicking layer underneath.
Yep, like they say, dress like an onion.
Dress like an onion.
In layers. You start with one layer, another layer, another layer. Kind of like this, layers.
Excellent. And then, of course, the bulk of the book is a guide to the various parks and trails along the North Shore. Maybe you could just tell us about there's several great trails right in Duluth where we are right now, like Lester Park.
Right, exactly. Boy, one great thing about living in Duluth, I literally live, it was about a 2-minute drive to come down here today, and I can go, there's 25 kilometers of trail right back here, about 7 of which are lit at night. So
Terrific.
Duluth is full of little trails like that. A lot of them run by the city, just our park dollars at work. Some of them, there's some private things. But just, right here in Duluth, there's as much variety. I think there's probably 150 kilometers of trail right here in town.
And then the book actually moves up the shore. I know one of my favorite trails was there's a trail that starts just behind Silver Bay, and I think it goes through Palisade Valley and then ends up in Tetigouche.
Right.
And tell us a little bit about.
Well, that's actually that Northwood ski touring trail outside Silver Bay is one of the people have thanked me the most for writing this book because they've discovered these trails. So it's a great set of trails. It's diagonal skiing only. In other words, no skate skiing. So it's narrow trails that kind of wind through the woods, and just like a lot of the trails on the North Shore, created by volunteers, maintained by volunteers, just a real strong volunteer presence. They get a tiny bit of money from those ski passes that everybody buys, everyone's supposed to buy. But mostly it's just because they love skiing and they love promoting the sport among their community. So this Northwest Trails, and then there's a connector trail over to Tetigouche.
Yep.
Now Tetigouche has these great warm lodges, so you can warm your feet over a fire over lunch, and then take the great screaming downhill down to the Tetigouche parking lot. You'd have a pretty full day.
One of the things I really liked about the book was you, in one section, you talk about the best places to take your mom skiing, or the best places to...
trails my mother would like.
Trails your mother would like, that's it. And another one was trails where you're likely to see wolves. And actually, I was in Tetigouche once, and we did hear wolves howling. Have you heard wolves or seen wolves on any of these trails?
You hear wolves, you see the trails, you see the tracks, you see the deer that they killed. I personally have not seen one while I'm on my skis.
Okay.
While I'm in the car driving back from skiing, I have. So.
How about moose? That's something that would be fun to see. Ever seen?
Cool thing about moose. Thing about moose. If you're skiing on ungroomed trails, the track of a moose is perfectly wide for people. So they make a great, if they bushwhack down a trail, it's a great place for you to ski right down because their trails are
just exactly
perfect spacing. Yeah.
Great. Moving a little further up the shore, do you have any favorite places you like to go up towards Lutsen in that area?
Yeah, boy. Up kind of at the far northeastern end, that whole area, there's it's called the North Shore Mountains Trail. It's all connected, all through, starting down by Temperance River State Park, and all the way up just this side of Grand Marais. There's about 250 kilometers of trails. It's all interconnected up there. One of my favorite places is the Deer Yard Trails.
Deer Yards, okay.
You go inland from Grand Marais. It's about 10 miles inland, especially as you wander around the lake. So it's up in the ridgeline. The snow lasts longer. There's deeper, longer lasting snow up there, and it's just a great about 7K loop you can do around past Deer Yard Lake. And
now, is there a good chance of seeing deer there, we hope?
that was actually pretty funny because I was there thinking this is called Deer Yard Lake. I'm sure there can be deer, but I actually saw no sign of deer there.
No sign of deer.
Deer Yard Lake is apparently named after Deer Yard Creek, which goes down in the North Shore past the John Vick Deer Yard, which there are a lot of deer there.
Okay.
At Deer Yard Lake, there are not a lot of deer.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about some of the other types of winter recreation we can enjoy up on the North Shore here.
Well, there's plenty of snowshoeing opportunities, for example. Then that's a sport that's really taken off in the last couple of years. People snowshoe on the Superior Hiking Trail, as we were talking about.
Okay.
All of the state parks now, I think, have snowshoe trails set aside in addition to ski trails.
And that's really something that almost anybody can enjoy. I mean, walking on skis is not skiing, but walking on snowshoes is snowshoeing.
Right. Well, you know, that's funny because people talk about snowshoeing as if somehow like the act of strapping on these things is like, that's what you're trying to do. But
Right.
but it's actually, snowshoeing is just a great way to get out in the woods in the wintertime when you see people snowshoeing on basically packed trails where you could walk with your feet. It's like, that's not snowshoeing.
Right.
The idea of snowshoeing is just, it enables you to get off in the woods and off these wild, quiet places that, as far as you know, no one's ever been before.
Exactly.
So it's a great way to do that.
Speaking of places that nobody's ever been before, and one of the things you talk about in the book, which is actually one of my favorite Minnesota adventures, and something that I think is almost is virgin territory for a lot of people, is skiing down these
down
small
rivers,
creeks
just
and
like this.
rivers,
Yeah,
which we're right next to
Right.
Lester Creek right
Right.
now. And you really went to some length in the book to talk about that experience, and even rated some of the better rivers for doing that, because it's really wonderful. As you can see right here, there's these little canyons that are formed even by the smallest streams.
Right. There's, you know, every kind of sport, there's what you might call peak experiences. Like, you know, it's one thing to just sort of canoe down a river, but when you hit the rapids and things are really rushing, you know, that's a peak experience. Or when you're backpacking, it's one thing to just sort of go along the trail, but when you actually go up and bag the peak, literally, that's a peak experience.
Yes.
And skiing on rivers here is one of the few things to do that. Now, along with that, there's some risk to it too.
Absolutely.
These are not groomed trails. These are not places where you would do this at home, so to speak. They are wild, rushing places, and there's a chance you could get badly hurt on them, compared to most of the skiing you do on the North Shore.
So you really do have to prepare for those in a way that you wouldn't if you were going out.
When I go skiing on rivers, you know, for example, I am basically counting on falling through the ice at some point. Now, falling through the ice is probably not a bad thing. It's most of these creeks have about 6 inches of water in the wintertime. So
they're really not going to go too far.
Right. But there are some places where you're going to go, and if you happen to fall through, like at the bottom of a waterfall or something, there's 10 feet deep of water there, and it's very cold.
The one thing I noticed about skiing down these rivers was really that it was one of the few places where knowing how to do telemark skiing comes in really handy. The person I was with was an excellent telemark skier, and he was able to go down these places where these steep drops and these waterfalls, and boom, 1-2 turns and he's at the bottom standing up, which is not how I ended up at the bottom of that same drop.
Yeah, when I go out on rivers, I have an old pair of telemark skis, exactly, with metal edges actually, which is nice for when you hit icy patches and whatnot. But
let's just finish up maybe by talking a little bit about the production of the book.
Sure.
One of the key things to any guidebook is the maps, and tell us who did the maps?
Well, we decided early on that we wanted to have this book have good maps, exactly, because, you know, it's one thing to sort of give directions, but people have different ways of thinking, and some people are very map-oriented, and actually maps are, a lot of people are very map-oriented, so it made a lot of sense to put some really good maps in there. So we took the time to make some good maps. I'm saying we because really the whole book was a team production. It was myself and my wife, actually, Sally Rauschenfels, who did a lot of the graphic design. I'm sort of a brains and brawn thing. I'm sort of the brawn behind the operation. She's sort of the brains behind the operation. So she edits and deals with making everything look really nice. And one of the things she did was the maps. We just collected maps we could get from every place. Sometimes it was a matter of me going to the trailhead of the local ski club and actually photographing the map. The only map they had was on that little board there, so I had to take that picture. And we turned all those into maps for the book, and I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I think they did too. And the other thing that I'll just mention quickly is I think that the photographs that Rudy Hargesheimer took really add a nice flavor to the book.
Rudy's a big, he knows the North Shore really well, and he's an avid skier and hiker himself. So, and given that the book is published by the Superior Hiking Trail Association, and he's president of the board of that, there's a real natural connection.
Absolutely. Well, Andrew, I think it's time for us to quit talking and start skiing.
Sounds good.
I thank you for joining us on this winter day, and look forward to hitting the trail with you here.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All righty. Howdy, welcome to the second half of Northern Lights. In this half, we'll be talking with photographer Jay Steinke, who's been documenting the beauty of the North Shore of Lake Superior in 2 books that he's done. The first one is Superior's North Shore, Wild Places. And in the second book, which just came out in May of 1998, the book Gunflint Territory. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thank you.
Now, you grew up around another Great Lake and moved up to the North Shore in Lake Superior. Tell us a little bit about your background.
I grew up in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area on Lake Michigan, and spent a lot of time down on the lake as a child, just exploring. And I've always said that that's where I was infected with a love for the Great Lakes and the wilderness, really. It kind of bit me there, and all seasons, winter, summer, spent a lot of time down at the lake.
Great. And you've been up in the Duluth and North Shore area since about when?
Right. I moved up here in '81.
Okay.
And the photographic potential and the wilderness was a real strong pull to bring me up here.
Terrific. Now, on both of these books, they're photography books. And when you go out and do your photography, do you set the shots up in advance? Do you have certain places that you know that you want to capture, or how do you go about the process of actually taking your photographs?
That's it's a big process. A lot of scouting locations. A lot of times I'm not out specifically shooting, but I'm always keeping an eye open for a possible shot.
Okay.
I take notes. I'll record places. Come back to this spot in winter. This would be a nice shot at sunrise, sunset. It's just really being aware of photographic potential, compositions.
And the light plays an important part.
Light, tremendous. That's the whole key to it. I'm not a bright light photographer. I'm more of a soft light photographer, which...
So the winter photography works well for you then,
yeah,
too.
Yeah. And being up here along Lake Superior, a lot of fog and soft light.
Great. One of the things a couple of photographs that I really liked in your first book, Wild Places, were taken in the midst of a storm, really, and you seem to do a good job of capturing the spirit of the lake in all its moods, not necessarily this calm,
right,
peaceful body of water, but tell us a little bit about that shot that you used for the cover of the Wild Places book.
Okay, I call that shot Thundering Shores. And I like to capture a lot of mood and emotion in my images. Lake Superior is known for its power and majesty and mood. And I think when I associate or think of Lake Superior, I associate it with power. It sank the Fitzgerald and many other ships. And this was an image. I found this location, and I had it already composed, and I needed to come back on a day when there was a northeast wind blowing. And it came, and I went to that location and just had to wait for the wave to break. It was a long wait. It was cold. And the last image of the last frame on the film was the shot.
The shot that, that you used.
Yeah, the breaking wave.
And Jay, what kind of camera do you use? I know there's a lot of photographers at home that go out and snap a shot here and there, but you have a little more methodical approach. Tell us a little bit about the equipment that you use and the film that you use.
Okay, I use a medium format camera, and that is 2 1/4 by 2 3/4 inch transparency. I shoot transparency films.
That's a slide film, correct?
Slide film, but larger size, for the purpose of publication, pretty much. And I take about 4 or 5 lenses with me, a couple wide angle, a medium lens, and then a telephoto.
Okay. Tell us just about a couple other of your favorite shots. I know there's one of the witch tree, which a lot of Minnesotans are familiar with.
Right. That shot, I've been up to the witch tree many times, and I think a lot of it is the history that surrounds the tree. They say it's 350 to 400 years old, which just amazes me that this tree, cedar tree, can stand for that long on the edge, this precipice of a rock, and just be around for that long when the severity of the weather and the winter and the winds
pretty amazing.
hit that tree. So that's a real special shot for me, and it really has a real strong character of its own.
Right. I really liked a number of the shots of the waterfalls that you took in the book, but let's move on to the book that you just came out with this past year, and that's Gunflint Territory.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about how that came to mind, why you decided to do a book about one of Minnesotans' favorite places, the Gunflint Trail and the Boundary Waters.
Okay, I spent a lot of time canoeing off the Gunflint Trail. A little bit of time too out of Ely, but because I'm close to the trail, I spent more time up there. Again, I picked my projects because of the mood and the emotion that they strike me with, and just the waters of the Boundary Waters, the history of the Gunflint Trail region, the terrain, white pines, and just the experience and the feel that I get when I'm up there was a real inspiration to doing the book.
There's a couple of images in that book that I really like. The one that almost looks like candy has been spread out on this reflecting water. Tell us a little bit about that photograph.
Okay, that's called Maple Pond, and I was walking up a real small creek, and I came upon this pond with a maple tree right next to it, and it was fall, and these leaves were scattered all over this pond. It was just like you said, it was just like candy being spread out on it. That's a real colorful image, and there's not many maple up there, so it's unique for the Gunflint Trail.
Right, right. Tell us about a couple other your photographs that were some of your favorites out of that book. I know you got a good shot of some old growth white pine.
Right. White pine plays a real big part of the history up there. As you know, a lot of it has been logged off. They're a real stately tree. And that image, which I call Gunflint White Pine, was taken during a nice soft fog, which just adds a real mystique and mood to that great tree.
And you're not afraid to go out and shoot in the rain, are you?
No, I love the weather and the elements. Again, it adds to the character of the land and the mood that I'm after. Another real favorite shot of mine was taken Lake Kakakabik. Went out and scouted locations the night before. I wanted to get a sunrise shot. That night, a tremendous lightning thunderstorm came up, and got up real early and kind of bushwhacked my way up in the dark to the top of this overlook. And just at that time, the sun broke through at sunrise from all these clearing storm clouds, and the vista up there, the photography, the photo just doesn't do justice of what it's like to be up there with just being, hit by the wind and just the whole panoramic view that you get. So that's a real favorite shot.
Yeah, I think you've done a terrific job of showing the real intimate moods of these places, as well as some of the real panorama and the sense of space that you get. And maybe we could talk just a little bit about the process of self-publishing books.
Okay.
It's definitely one of the approaches that can work with a regional book like this. You did all the prep work yourself, and then you explain just to folks how you go about self-publishing a book. And
well, the main reason for the self-publishing is because we have more control over the final outcome of the product. You can select the photos that you want to be in there, the layout, the design, and if it's a small enough region that you can handle the marketing and distribution, it's really the only way to go. A lot more people are doing it today. I think the ultimate thing is just the control that you have. This is your life's work put into this book, and you really want it to communicate and say what you felt in the production of it.
Absolutely. And the first book you actually had printed, I believe, in Missouri, and that went pretty well. But for the second book, you decided to go overseas, and actually it was printed in Korea, I believe.
That's right. I don't know if
Minnesota book printed in Korea. Well, that's
right.
okay.
Yeah, that might not go over too well with some people, but it's a real global economy now, and the quality we got and the price that was offered to us for the work was really good, and it was nice to see another part of the world. We went over there for a press check.
You actually went over there and did the press check, and
Right.
the images turned out great, and I think
Yep.
it was really worth the effort, because you can really see the quality in those photos.
Yeah.
They really come alive. The greens in spring, you feel like you're already through winter when you start looking
Right.
at the book, which is really a wonderful thing. So do you have any projects coming up at this point? Do you have another area of this corner of the world that you want to document and show us?
I would like to do a book on winter, just strictly winter images. I love the season, the message that it communicates, the quietness, the stillness, the beauty that everybody comments on. So that's something I'm thinking about. And like with any book, it's you've got to set the commitment. You have to
Right.
drive the stake into the ground and follow through on it. So it's in the thinking process right now.
Right. So that would be a book that would, again, you're going to work. You would continue to work with color photographs, though, you
Right.
think?
Yeah.
And would that book probably incorporate? It could be the boundary waters. It could be the North Shore.
Yes, it would. It would be a lot of moods of winter, and it'd be something on the topic of like winter's visit or winter's touch or winter's graces, and that's felt and seen everywhere, in cities, in nature.
Okay.
It's really a beautiful season.
Because I notice in both of your books up to this point, there's, I think, one canoe in one of the images in GUNFLINT territory. Maybe there's a couple, but primarily you really set out to capture nature on its own to really, and I think you've done an excellent job of that. There's the one image in the Superior North Shores that I think it was it the Beaver Creek or
Beaver River.
Beaver River. Tell us a little bit about that shot. That was
That image was taken in spring breakup, and just a roaring. It was taken at Glen Avon Falls on the Beaver River, and it's a really pretty and powerful place to go when after a heavy rain or spring breakup.
Well, it's a beautiful introduction to the book, and I think it's a good place to perhaps conclude this interview.
Right.
And appreciate that you could come out with us today, Jay, on this beautiful winter day. And thank you for joining us with Northern Lights. We've been speaking with Jay Steinke, a photographer who's done 2 books on northern Minnesota, the Superior North Shore and GUNFLINT territory.
Thank you.